The story begins in a Russian prison where we see a man named Frank Abagnale Jr. Frank is a very clever con artist who has committed many serious crimes. At this time, an FBI agent named Carl comes to take him back to America. Carl was talking to Frank when suddenly Frank's health started getting worse. At first, Carl thought this was one of Frank's tricks, but then he realized that no one could fake it so well. He quickly started taking him to the hospital, but Frank, seeing the chance, tried to run away from there too. However, the police caught him, and after that, we are shown his story from the beginning. Frank was born into a very happy family. His parents loved each other deeply. One day, Frank's father took him to a shop to buy a suit, but the woman working there said that the shop was closed at the moment. Hearing this, Frank's father quickly pulled out a gold necklace and asked if it was hers. The woman was impressed by his charm and said, "All right, you can buy the suit." Frank's father was an expert at doing such tricks. Then he asked Frank to act like a driver and drive the car. Soon, they reached the bank, where the bank manager came to meet them. Actually, Frank's father had suffered a huge loss in his business, and that's why he needed a loan from the bank. Because of a mistake by another accountant, he got late in paying his taxes, which caused him heavy losses. But even after explaining everything, no bank was ready to help him. The government seized his car, property, money, everything. Even in this financial crisis, Frank's father still opened a bank account for him. Frank asked, "Why are you doing this? You're already in debt." His father replied, "Don't worry about me. Your whole life is ahead of you. You have to live it well." There was a shortage of money in their lives, so Frank had to change his school too. But on the very first day at his new school, a boy started bullying him. He made fun of Frank and said, "You look like a teacher. Dress according to your age." Frank got very angry at this and decided to actually act like a teacher. He went into the class and told the real teacher there, "What are you doing here? This is my class. I'll teach now. Come later." The poor teacher got nervous and left. After this, Frank humiliated that bully in front of everyone. For a whole week, no one realized that a student was teaching the class like this. He even planned to take the entire class on a trip, but soon the school found out, and Frank's parents were called in. His father stayed serious in front of the principal, but later, he laughed a lot about it with Frank. One day, when Frank came home, he saw another man in his mother's bedroom. That man used to work with his father. His mother tried hard to act like nothing was going on, and even gave Frank some money, saying, "Take this, and buy something for yourself." But Frank had understood everything. A few days later, Frank's parents decided to separate. The lawyer asked Frank if he wanted to live with his mother or his father. Frank was heartbroken, watching his family fall apart in front of his eyes. He couldn't bear it anymore. He ran away from home and went to another city. He didn't have much money, only a bank account and a checkbook. He started writing checks and giving them to hotels. But when the checks began to bounce, the manager kicked him out. Then one day, while sitting idle, he got an idea that checks can also be changed. This is a story of older times, so back then, technology was not very advanced. Taking advantage of this, Frank slowly started making fake checks. He began cashing them by writing different people's names on them. And if the bank manager refused to give him cash, he would confidently use one of his father's old tricks, like the necklace trick, after which his work would get done. But gradually, his tricks started getting caught. Soon, his checks were not being accepted by any bank. Then one day, Frank noticed a pilot outside a hotel. Everyone was giving that pilot a lot of respect. Seeing this, Frank got an idea. Why not become a pilot? Not a real one, but a fake one. That way, everyone would respect him, and his checks would be cashed easily. He then went to the airport disguised as a reporter and told the officials there, "I'm writing an article on pilots. For that, I need to know some important details." He found out everything about where pilots got their uniforms from, and then he called the supplier saying, "My uniform got damaged. Can I get a new one stitched?" After using a few tricks, Frank managed to get a good uniform. He was about to pay for it by check, but the employee there said, "I just need your pilot ID. You don't need to pay anything at all. We'll get it from the airline ourselves." Frank had already made a fake ID, and with that, he got the uniform for free. After this, Frank went to the bank to cash his check, the same bank that earlier ignored him. Now the manager himself came forward and cashed the check personally. Later, Frank learned from a hotel that he could cash bigger checks too, not just small ones, as long as they looked like salary checks. So, Frank started making his own fake salary checks. He would remove the airline company's logo from a toy plane and paste it on the check. Then, when he went to the bank, the manager told him, "Sir, You can cash this directly at the airport." Frank realized he could now get his checks cashed anytime at the airport, and he liked this very much. The receptionist there even asked him if he was flying with them that day. When Frank said yes, she immediately took him inside the plane. Sitting in the plane was free for pilots. Frank was not a real pilot, so he was scared inside, but he still acted very confident in front of everyone. He then went up to a beautiful air hostess and asked her, "Is this your necklace?" He impressed the girl with this trick of his father. Frank looked a little older than his age, and no one suspected that he was not a real pilot. Frank was now enjoying life to the fullest. He even started flirting with a bank manager and slowly began understanding the entire system, where the checks came from, where they went, how account numbers were assigned. He learned everything. He also found out that banks used a special typewriter to encode checks. So, he bought a second-hand typewriter of the same kind. Frank was no longer a beginner. His work had become very professional. Gradually, he started withdrawing more and more money using fake checks, and his frauds grew bigger and bigger. News of his activities reached the FBI, and the case was assigned to an agent named Carl. Carl took his work very seriously. One day, Frank met his father, to whom he often wrote letters and told him about what he was doing these days. Frank's father believed his son had truly become a pilot and felt very proud of him. Frank told him, "Since the government took everything from you, I bought a car for you with my earnings. The same one James Bond drives in the movies." But his father said, "After the tax scam, the government is still after me. If I take this car, they'll just take it away too." His father's store had also closed, and he was going through tough times. Frank even offered him money, but he refused, saying, "I cannot take money from you." By now, Frank had understood the whole system of the country very well. He would go to different states and pass checks from different places. The FBI was keeping a close watch on all his activities, and soon they tracked him to the hotel where he had passed his last check. When they asked at the hotel, they found out that Frank was still staying there. He had been there for so long that he was now familiar with everyone at the hotel. Carl went straight to Frank's room with a gun. Frank realized that if he didn't act smart, he would be caught. So, he started pretending to be an undercover agent. He said, "Calm down. I'm from the Secret Service. Did you think you were the only one looking for this man? The whole government is after him." Carl said, "Show me your ID. How can I believe you?" Frank replied, "Keep my entire wallet. Check it carefully." Carl couldn't open the wallet with one hand. Meanwhile, Frank told him, "Look, our men have already caught that criminal. We reached here before you." Someone outside was helping a blind man into a car, and from a distance, Carl thought the criminal had really been caught. Because of this, Carl started trusting Frank. Frank picked up all his things used for making fake checks and told Carl, "The police will arrive soon. Until then, I'll take this evidence downstairs." Carl trusted him completely and even told him to take back his wallet. But Frank deliberately said, "No, you keep it." Then he ran away with all the important things. After some time, when Carl finally opened the wallet, he found it empty. That cunning con artist had escaped right in front of him. Carl felt deeply humiliated. His boss also scolded him harshly. Carl was so angry that he even shouted back at his boss. Slowly, the airline started finding out about the way Frank pretended to be a pilot. Now, it has become a little difficult to keep doing the same scam again. When the press came to know about him, they gave Frank the nickname James Bond. Frank was very happy with this. He started wearing suits like James Bond and even bought a car like him. Time passed, and Christmas arrived. Carl was working alone in his office when Frank suddenly called him. Frank said, "I want to apologize for everything I've done to you so far." He even gave Carl his address, but Carl replied, "You're trying to trap me again, right? This time I won't fall into your trick." Carl also told him, "You may have money, but you are very lonely." Frank felt very hurt after hearing this and hung up the phone. But this time, he was actually telling the truth. He had given Carl his real address. The last time Frank had talked to Carl, he gave his name as Barry Allen, which is a comic book character. After realizing this, Carl called his office and said, "This is just a kid who looks a little older. He is very young. That's why we haven't been able to find him." Carl then told them to make a list of children who had run away from home. "Someone must have filed a missing report," he said. After a lot of investigation, Carl finally reached Frank's house, where he met Frank's mother. When Frank's mother was shown the photo, she confirmed, "Yes, this is my son." Carl told her, "He is the #1 fraud. If you ever hear anything about him, inform the police immediately." But Frank's mother said, "Hey, he's just a child. Maybe he only took some money for food and drinks. Picking up her purse, she added, "I will pay it. How much do I have to pay?" Carl replied, $1.4 million. Hearing this, Frank's mother was shocked. Meanwhile, Frank was living a very luxurious life in another city. He had some work at a hospital, so he went there. Inside, he saw a nurse named Brenda crying. A doctor had scolded her for making a mistake. Frank comforted her and said, "Don't worry, you're amazing. Maybe that doctor is the crazy one." At that moment, an idea came to Frank's mind. He asked Brenda if there were any job vacancies in the hospital. Actually, being a pilot had become risky now. So, Frank thought of becoming a doctor instead. He made a fake degree from Harvard and went for an interview. The doctor there said, "Sir, you want to work in our small hospital?" Frank had prepared himself by watching movies of different doctors to learn how they behaved. So he replied, "I want to help people in small towns, not just in big cities." Hearing this, he got the job immediately. But Frank didn't actually do any work. He just kept giving useless advice to the doctors. In his free time, he and Brenda grew very close to each other. Then one day, he was suddenly called for an emergency case. A boy was badly injured. Seeing the blood, Frank was shaken inside. But with full confidence, he asked another doctor, "What would you do in this situation?" Whatever the doctor replied, Frank said, "Absolutely right. I'm confident you can handle this. I'll come back later to see if you did it correctly." Saying this, he quickly left. But in reality, he was feeling very sick. On the other hand, Carl went to meet Frank's father and told him about all of Frank's activities. Frank's father said, "I don't know where he is, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you." Carl understood that father and son were very close and must be sending letters to each other. By looking at the letters lying there, Carl calculated where Frank might be living. Soon, he was planning to go there with the police. Meanwhile, Frank and Brenda had fallen in love. One day, Brenda suddenly started crying. She told Frank, "I once had an abortion. After that, my father threw me out of the house." Frank thought for a while and then said, "Look, if I talk to your father about marriage, will he accept you?" Brenda became very happy after hearing this. Then Frank went to meet Brenda's father. Brenda's father was a lawyer. So Frank said, "I was also a lawyer before I became a doctor." He had also studied law by watching movies, and with his words, he impressed everyone there. Brenda's father asked him, "Tell me the truth. What did a man like you see in my daughter?" To this, Frank replied, "I'm just an ordinary man who loves your daughter." Hearing this, Brenda's father was very impressed. Frank then asked him, "If I want to practice law here, what will I have to do?" Brenda's father replied, "You've already completed law school, so you just have to pass an exam. After that, you can practice here." Frank actually studied hard, took the exam, and became a lawyer. The story then shifted back to the present, where Carl finally arrested Frank. Carl asked, "How did you pass that exam?" Frank replied, "What difference does it make? You're only going to take me to jail, not to court." The story then went back again, where we saw Frank bonding well with Brenda's family. He was about to marry her. He expressed his desire to meet his father and told him, "We'll get back everything the government took away from us. Then you can convince Mom too and we'll all return to our old life together." But his father told him that his mother had already married someone else. Frank felt heartbroken hearing this. His father also said, "I've come to know about your deeds." Hearing this gave Frank a huge shock and he walked away. That night, Frank called Carl and said, "I'm getting married. I want to forget everything that happened between us." Frank now hoped that all the charges against him would be dropped. But Carl told him, "I'll never leave you. As long as I have this job, I'll keep chasing you. After everything you've done, you can't escape." After this, Carl came up with an idea. He knew Frank couldn't change his name after marriage. Since Frank was now a lawyer and had once posed as a doctor, Carl calculated that the wedding invitation must have been printed somewhere. So, he started keeping an eye on it. When Frank got married, all the agents reached the wedding. Seeing this, Frank took Brenda to his room and told her the truth, that he had been fooling people all along, but he assured her that he truly loved her. He said, "I'm running away from here now. Meet me at the airport tomorrow, and don't tell anyone where you're going." The next day, Frank waited for Brenda at the airport. She came, but she wasn't alone. Agents were with her. It became very difficult for Frank to escape. Then he came up with a clever idea. He went to a college and said that their airline was hiring many air hostesses. After conducting several interviews, he selected some beautiful girls. Surrounded by them and dressed in a pilot's uniform, he entered the airport. All the policemen were so distracted by the beauty of the girls that Frank easily slipped away. At the same time, A boy who looked like Frank was standing outside the airport with a car. All the FBI agents ran to catch him, but when caught, the boy said someone had just paid him money to stand there. This way, Frank cleverly escaped from the country. After that, he committed huge frauds in many countries. The last place he was spotted, he was busy making checks. Carl requested his seniors to let him go after Frank, saying, "I'll catch him and bring him back." But his seniors refused. "We couldn't catch him in our own country. How can you catch him in another?" Carl continued digging for more information and soon learned that Frank was getting his checks printed. He suspected Frank was in Russia, but Russia was huge. Where exactly could he be? Carl then remembered that Frank's mother was from a small Russian village. After researching, he found out there was also a printing press there. It was Christmas Eve again. When Carl arrived, he found Frank there. Frank said, "Come, I'll show you around. Come outside with me." But Carl warned him, "Don't even think about running or the police here will shoot you. If you surrender now, I can save you." Frank said, "Swear on your children." Carl swore and said, "Believe me, I'm telling the truth." After this, Frank allowed Carl to handcuff him. But when they stepped outside, there was no one. The very next moment, however, several police vehicles arrived. The story then shifted back to the present again. Carl and Frank were on a plane, about to land in America. Frank said, "I want to talk to my father." With a heavy heart, Carl told him that his father had died after slipping in the bathroom. Frank was devastated. He went to the toilet and cried loudly. There was very little time left before landing. When Frank didn't come out of the bathroom, Carl broke the door, only to see that Frank had removed the sink screws and crawled into the plane's inner compartment. As soon as the landing wheels opened, Frank escaped at the first opportunity. That same night, he went to see his mother, only to find she was happily settled with her new family and even had a young daughter. On the other hand, Carl had already guessed Frank would visit his mother. He was waiting there and arrested him. Frank was still less than 19 years old. Carl wanted him to be treated as a minor, but the government wanted the harshest punishment for such a huge scam. They decided he would rot in jail for 10 years, completely alone, without talking to anyone. One day, Carl came to meet him. Since frauds like Frank's were still happening, Carl showed him a check and asked for his opinion. The moment Frank looked at it, he spotted the problem and said, "There's something fishy here." Carl realized only Frank could help stop such crimes. Next time, Carl brought some FBI agents with him. They were also impressed with Frank's skills. Slowly, Carl managed to get Frank out of jail and gave him a job in the FBI. Frank now had to work 8 hours a day. Life had given him another chance. But if he tried to escape again, he would be sentenced to 50 years in prison. Frank tried his best to do the job, but he soon grew bored. He pulled out his records from the FBI and deleted them. That weekend, he planned to flee to another country, but Carl stopped him and said, "Look, you're still a kid. Life has given you another chance, so take it. If you run, you'll spend your entire life in jail. I won't stop you, but come back to work on Monday. Remember, no one is chasing you anymore. You don't need to run." Frank left, and on Monday, Carl waited anxiously. For a moment, he thought Frank had run away again, but Frank came back and started working brilliantly on different cases. After making a name for himself in the FBI, he eventually started his own company, which worked to eliminate bank frauds. After all, who better to catch thieves than Frank? This is a true story, where Frank eventually became a millionaire the right way. Friends, if you liked this video and got lost in the story while watching, please subscribe to support us, so we can keep bringing you more videos like this.